What if ancient tablets hold a chilling secret about humanity's future? For millennia, we have been taught that Sumerian cuneiform was merely the record of a dead civilization, a ledger of grain taxes and forgotten kings. But we were wrong. Deep within a newly uncovered chamber, hidden beneath the shifting sands of the Iraqi desert, a cache of unprecedented tablets has been revealed. These are not stories of the past. They are precise astronomical calendars for a future we are about to enter. We have spent months painstakingly translating these texts, and what they reveal is undeniable. A meticulous countdown to a cosmic window that is about to open. The ancient world left us a chilling message, hidden in plain sight, detailing astronomical alignments and geological markers that point directly to our time. The question isn't if the masters are coming back, but when, and what it means for a world that has forgotten its creators. Prepare yourself. Everything you thought you knew about history is about to be rewritten. This is the decoding of the Anunnaki's next return cycle. To understand the countdown, we must first look at the place where the silence was broken. In the late 19th century, the library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh gave us the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Enuma Elish. For over 100 years, scholars believed that the library had yielded all its secrets. But in the autumn of 2024, a seismic shift, both literal and metaphorical, revealed a secondary vault, deeper and far more intentional than the first. This was the hidden Cache of Nineveh. Unlike the clay tablets found in the upper levels, these artifacts were encased in a high-density silicate, a glass-like substance that preserved the etchings with terrifying clarity. As the sand was brushed away, the scribes of our team didn't find the flowing, poetic script of a royal decree. Instead, they found what can only be described as a crystalline cuneiform, a technical, rigid language that prioritized data over metaphor. The environment of the cache itself speaks of a cold, administrative purpose. The chamber is composed of massive, seamless limestone blocks, polished to a mirror finish, devoid of any decoration or art. There are no murals of kings, no statues of gods. There is only the weight of the stone and the chilling efficiency of the layout. It feels less like a library and more like a hard drive, a backup system for a civilization that knew it would eventually go dark. In this silence, the Anunnaki are not depicted as deities to be worshipped. They are felt as functions. In these texts, they are referred to as the operators of the Great Circle. Their presence in the records is static and absolute. The tablets describe tall, proportional silhouettes that move with a calculated, minimal grace. Beings that do not judge, do not empathize, and do not care for the individual joys or sorrows of the Lulu. They are managers of an era, and these tablets are their closing reports. The most disturbing aspect of the Nineveh cache is the prophetic inventory. One specific series of tablets, labeled in the internal index as the Registry of the Third Shah, begins to detail a countdown. It uses the precessional movement of the stars as a ticking clock. The scribes realized that the Sumerians weren't looking at the sky to predict the weather. They were tracking a celestial arrival that occurs with the precision of a seasonal harvest. As we ventured deeper into the heart of the hidden cache, the air grew colder, and the very nature of the discovery underwent a profound transformation. We were no longer merely unearthing the ruins of a dead civilization. We were stepping into a masterclass of celestial mechanics. In the central sanctum of the vault, we encountered what our lead researchers have termed the Great Precession Engine. This was not a physical machine with gears and pulleys, but a series of monumental wall reliefs, carved with surgical precision into the dark limestone, that functioned as a sophisticated celestial calculator of terrifying accuracy. Unlike any star map previously catalogued in the annals of Sumerian archaeology, These reliefs did not simply document the past positions of the stars. They were predictive. The Scribes of Nineveh had decoded the Earth's axial wobble, the 26,000-year cycle known as the precession of the equinoxes, with a mathematical fluency that defies our modern understanding of ancient history. They didn't view time as a linear progression of events, but as a series of interlocking orbital gears. Through the crystalline cuneiform found on the adjacent tablets, they identified a specific gateway, the Gate of the Gods. This is an astronomical alignment involving the Pleiades and the constellation of Draco, which, according to the texts, serves as the precise orbital threshold for the Anunnaki's cyclical return to the inner solar system. The tablets explain that the 3,600-year cycle, the Shah, is far more than a convenient unit of time for ancient kings. It is a biological and gravitational synchronization. The texts describe a celestial body they call the radiant star, a massive dark object that we, in our modern era, are only now beginning to hypothesize as Planet 9 or Nibiru. As this mass approaches its perihelion, it begins to exert a subtle but undeniable influence on the Earth's own magnetic field. The Sumerians called this the breathing of the Earth. The scrolls and stones warn of a specific sequence of geological markers that act as heralds for the coming window. They describe the shifting of the magnetic poles as the wandering of the north, and a subtle, high-frequency resonance in the soil that causes the bronze in the temples to hum without being struck. To the modern ear, these sound like descriptions of natural disasters, but to the Scribes of Nineveh, these were merely the alarm bells of a cosmic clock that had been wound thousands of years ago. They understood that when the Earth begins to vibrate at this specific frequency, the countdown has entered its final phase. We are now realizing that we are currently standing in the final minutes of that ancient clock. The specific alignments described in the cuneiform, the positioning of the winged disk against the backdrop of the winter solstice and the rising of Draco, are beginning to manifest in our modern astronomical observations with chilling regularity. The timetable is no longer a matter of myth or vague prophecy. It is an astronomical certainty that was etched in stone to ensure we would recognize the signs when they arrived. The cosmic window is not a metaphorical door. It is a literal gravitational path that is opening as we speak. According to the calculations of the hidden cache, the gears of the solar system are clicking back into their original, primal alignment. The masters are not returning out of a sense of mercy or wrath, but because the orbit demands it. The timetable is set, the resonance is building, and as the Sumerians wrote so long ago, the gate is prepared for those who hold the key. As we breached the third and deepest level of the hidden cache, the air seemed to thicken with a palpable, rhythmic tension. We had moved beyond the history of Nineveh and the technical mechanics of the stars. Here, in the absolute foundation of the vault, we discovered the source of the pulse. It was a chamber unlike any other, dominated by a single monolithic pillar of dark, pressurized magnetite that seemed to vibrate at a frequency just below the threshold of human hearing. This was the physical manifestation of the Shah, the 3,600-year pulse that dictates the rise and fall of biological cycles on Earth. The tablets surrounding this central pillar, etched with the same rigid crystalline cuneiform we had encountered above, revealed a truth that redefined our understanding of human biology. According to these records, the Anunnaki did not merely create a workforce, they engineered a species that was biologically tethered to the orbital period of their home world. The 3,600-year cycle isn't just an astronomical measurement, it is a genetic trigger. The pulse, described in the texts, acts as a periodic synchronization event, a cosmic system update that occurs whenever the massive gravitational well of the radiant star, Planet 9, reaches its closest point to Earth. In the silence of this deep chamber, The archaeologists and biologists on our team began to decode the Lulu genetics series. The texts describe human DNA not as a finished product, but as a dormant operating system. They speak of the Great Sleep, a period of thousands of years where human consciousness is dialed down to a survivalist, material level. This corresponds exactly to the long stretch of the Anunnaki's orbit when their planet is in the furthest reaches of deep space. During this time, humanity is left to its own devices, largely forgotten by its architects, wandering through a fog of war, religion, and amnesia. But the tablets warn of the quickening. As the radiant star begins its return journey, the gravitational and magnetic fluctuations it sends ahead, the pulse, begin to reactivate the dormant strands of the human genome. The texts describe an era where the Lulu begin to wake up. This isn't a spiritual enlightenment in the modern sense, but a biological imperative. Patterns of high-frequency thought return. The ability to perceive multidimensional layers of reality increases, and the deep-seated memory of our origins starts to bubble to the surface of the collective unconscious. The researchers stood in awe as they translated the Audit Protocol. The Anunnaki return is not a homecoming parade. It is a harvest of data. They come to measure the progress of the biological experiment they planted. The 3,600-year pulse is the signal that the growth season is over. The tablets describe the Anunnaki as the gardeners of the third Shah, and they detail the criteria for the audit. They look for technological advancement, but more importantly, they look for harmonic resonance, the ability of the species to survive without destroying the planetary host. The most chilling revelation found in this level of the cache is the inventory of failures. The tablets record previous return cycles, the pulses of 3,600, 7,200, and 10,800 years ago. In each instance, the arrival of the pulse was accompanied by massive tectonic shifts, the cleansing of the soil by water or fire, and the drastic reduction of the human population. The texts suggest that these were not acts of God, but the inevitable byproduct of a massive celestial body passing through a fragile orbital system. The Anunnaki do not cause the destruction. They simply arrive in its wake to collect what remains and restart the cycle for the next Shah. Standing in that vault, our team realized that we are currently experiencing the first waves of the latest quickening. The modern symptoms are everywhere. The inexplicable global anxiety, the sudden leap in technological capability, and the strange atmospheric phenomena that scientists struggle to explain. We are being overclocked by the proximity of the radiant star. The pulse is accelerating our heartbeats and our history alike. The hidden Cache of Nineveh wasn't built as a tomb for kings, but as a survival manual for the awakened Lulu of the final generation. It was meant to be found now, at the precise moment when the magnetite pillar begins to hum in earnest. The records indicate that the pulse will peak within our lifetime, reaching a crescendo that will either shatter our current civilization or catapult it into the next stage of the experiment. As the archaeologists prepared to leave the lower vault, one final inscription was found at the base of the magnetite pillar. It was a simple administrative note, devoid of any divine pretense. It translated roughly to, "When the stone sings and the blood remembers, the cycle is complete. Prepare the accounts. The managers are within reach." We are no longer waiting for a myth. We are witnessing the reactivation of a 3,600-year-old biological contract. The pulse is steady, the window is open, and the audit has begun. In the final, most secluded quadrant of the hidden cache, we reach the culmination of our descent, the Chronos chronograph. If the previous levels were about history, mechanics, and biology, this final chamber was about a specific, unavoidable point in time. We were no longer looking at general cycles or ancient warnings. We were looking at a precise set of coordinates, and a date that had been set in stone before the first dynasty of Egypt ever rose. This was the decoding of the return window, the literal timestamp for the closing of the current age and the physical arrival of the orbital managers. The centerpiece of this chamber was not a pillar or a tablet, but a complex, multi-layered astrolabe carved into the floor, composed of rotating rings of polished hematite and silver. As our team of archaeoastronomers began to analyze the positioning of these rings, a terrifying realization dawned on us. The Anunnaki did not leave their return to chance or prophecy. They left a countdown based on the fixed heavens. The window they defined is a rare gravitational and light-based alignment where the Sun, the Earth, and the orbital path of the radiant star, Planet 9, intersect at a specific point in the galactic plane. This is what the cuneiform texts refer to as the zeroing of the balance. According to the high-density silicate tablets found in this quadrant, the return window is not a single day, but a highly volatile 3-year period. During this time, the massive gravitational influence of the approaching body begins to act as a lens, warping the light of distant stars and creating an atmospheric phenomenon the Sumerians called the false dawn. Our researchers matched these descriptions with modern astronomical data, finding that the markers the ancients described, the specific brightening of the Sirius system and the vibrating of the North Star, are precisely what our modern telescopes are beginning to record now. The text in Part 4 becomes deeply administrative and cold. It describes the arrival logistics. The Anunnaki do not arrive in a flash of light or through a supernatural portal. They arrive via a physical orbital corridor. The tablets provide a path of descent, detailing how the massive craft, the houses of the sky, will utilize the gravitational slingshot of the outer planets to decelerate into Earth's orbit. This isn't a religious visitation, it is a high-level logistical operation. The records even describe the resonance buoys that were left in our solar system eons ago, objects we currently mistake for anomalous asteroids like Oumuamua, which act as beacons to guide their fleet into the correct trajectory. The most disturbing aspect of the return window is its impact on the Lulu, humanity. The tablets explain that as the window opens, the biological quickening we discussed in Part 3 reaches its peak. This creates a state of collective vertigo. The human nervous system, tuned for millennia to a lower frequency, begins to struggle with the influx of high-frequency gravitational waves. The texts warn of a period of social dissolution, where those who are not anchored, those who have not understood the nature of the countdown, will experience a breakdown of cognitive coherence. This explains the irrational behavior and the sudden global sense of impending change that is currently saturating our modern world. It is the biological reaction to the proximity of the masters. As we translated the final decree of the return window, we found a set of instructions for the waiters at the gate. These were the specific bloodlines or secret cadres tasked with maintaining the hidden cache until the window opened. The decree states that when the window is 90% open, the blood of the earth, magma, will rise in 10 specific locations, and the voice of the wind will change its pitch. We are seeing these geological markers today. The increasing volcanic activity and the strange metallic skyquakes reported globally are the physical signs that the return window has entered its final irreversible phase. The Anunnaki are not coming to participate in our politics, our wars, or our economies. Those are the trivialities of the Lulu during the long sleep. They are coming to interface with the planetary core and to harvest the biological and informational data of the last 3,600 years. The return window is the period where the harvest is gathered and the next planetary template is loaded into the system. The hidden cache makes it clear. The window is not a door we can choose to close. It is a cosmic mechanism that is currently rotating into place. Our lead researcher, standing over the silver astrolabe, noted that the final alignment, the apex of the window, corresponds almost perfectly with the upcoming astronomical conjunctions of the next 24 months. The countdown is no longer in the hands of historians. It is in the hands of the cosmos itself. The silver rings of the Nineveh astrolabe have stopped moving, locking into a configuration that hasn't been seen since the era of the Great Flood. The message is stark and final. The time of waiting is over. The radiant star is no longer a distant threat. It is an incoming reality. The window is open. The light of the false dawn is already touching our upper atmosphere. The audit is no longer a future event. It is our current reality. We are the generation that will stand at the gate and witness the return of the managers of the Great Circle. The countdown has reached 0. As we breach the innermost sanctum, a chamber the tablets call the Hall of the Living Stone, we moved beyond the physical and the chronological. This was the heart of the biological contract. Here, the hidden cache revealed its most intimate secret. The Anunnaki return is not merely an orbital event or a physical arrival, but a profound biological resonance that alters the very vibration of human DNA. We found ourselves standing before a series of vertical, translucent cylinders made of a material that looked like liquid diamond, containing swirling, bioluminescent mists. These, the texts explain, are resonance chambers, places designed to stabilize the human nervous system during the peak of the 3,600-year pulse. The discovery in Part 5 forced us to re-evaluate the definition of humanity. The records in this level of the cache provide a detailed map of what the Sumerians called the Kundalulu, the latent energy system within the human body. It describes how the human heart and brain act as biological antennas, specifically tuned to the frequency of the Earth's magnetic field. However, as the radiant star enters the inner solar system, its massive gravitational wake creates a frequency shift. The tablets warn that during this time, the Earth's heartbeat, the Schumann resonance, begins to accelerate. Those whose biological systems are out of phase with this new frequency experience a state of cellular rejection. The researchers on our team, working alongside neuroscientists, began to translate the symphony of the blood. The texts explain that our genetic code contains silent sequences, strands of DNA that remain dormant for 3,600 years, only to be activated by the specific magnetic signature of the Anunnaki homeworld. This is the true meaning of the quickening. It is a forced evolutionary leap. The mists within the diamond cylinders were found to be atmospheric samples from the radiant star, designed to acclimate the human respiratory and nervous systems to the incoming environment. We realized that the hidden cache was not just a library, it was a biological laboratory for the transition. The atmosphere in the hall was heavy with a low, melodic vibration that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. This is the biological resonance. The tablets state that as the managers approach, the human heart rate begins to synchronize across the globe. This isn't a mystical concept. It is a mass entrainment caused by the gravitational pulse of the incoming mass. For those prepared, this resonance leads to a state of expanded coherence, a sudden ability to process information at a rate thousands of times faster than before. This is the awakening that the ancient texts promised, the moment the slave species, the Lulu, regains the cognitive functions of its architects. But there is a darker side to the resonance. The inventory of the unfit describes the biological fallout for those whose systems cannot handle the frequency jump. It speaks of a wasting of the spirit, where the disconnect between the old biological frequency and the new cosmic vibration leads to systemic organ failure and neurological collapse. This explains the great cleansing described in so many ancient myths. It wasn't an act of divine wrath, but a biological incompatibility. The return of the Anunnaki effectively overclocks the planet, and only those with the genetic and neurological resilience to handle the new voltage survive the transition. In this chamber, we also found the genetic mirrors. These are polished obsidian-like surfaces that, when touched, reflect a holographic projection of the individual's DNA structure. Our team members who touched them reported seeing a third strand appearing in the projection, a shimmering phantom helix that seemed to be reacting to the hum of the magnetite pillar in the level above. The tablets call this the Bridge of the Lords, the biological link that allows a human to perceive the Anunnaki not as gods or monsters, but as physical peers. The administrative tone of the texts here reached a chilling peak. They describe the Anunnaki as masters of the frequency. They don't need to use weapons to subdue a population. They simply adjust the planetary resonance. The return window is the period where they tune the instrument. We are the instrument. The hidden cache suggests that our current global era of technological obsession and digital connectivity was actually a predicted phase of this resonance, a way to prep the human mind for the massive data stream that occurs during the physical arrival. As the final translations were completed in the Hall of the Living Stone, a sense of eerie calm settled over the expedition. We understood now that the audit is biological. The Anunnaki are coming to see if the seeds they planted have developed the necessary resonance to join the orbital civilization. They are coming to harvest the fruits of a 3,600-year evolutionary cycle. The magnetic shifts, the skyquakes, and the rising magma are all just the tuning forks of a cosmic piano. The last tablet in this section, etched in a deep matte gold cuneiform, gave us the final warning. It said, "The blood sings to the father star. The bone remembers the first crafting. Do not fear the heat in the veins, for it is the fire of the return." We are no longer observing a historical site. We are living through a biological metamorphosis. The resonance is reaching its peak. Our hearts are no longer beating to the rhythm of the old earth. They are beginning to pulse with the rhythm of the incoming radiant star. We are being prepared. The Hall of the Living Stone has done its work. The biological contract is being executed in every cell of our bodies. The countdown is no longer on the wall or on the astrolabe. It is in our blood. The harvest is ready. The managers are here. In the final, most restricted terminal of the hidden cache, we found the blueprint for what the modern world would call a great reset. But this was not a political maneuver or an economic shift orchestrated by human hands. This was the engineering of the sphere, a master plan for the total structural and vibrational overhaul of the Earth. As the expedition entered the Vault of the Architects, we were met with a series of suspended 3D holographic models crafted from solidified light, depicting the Earth not as a natural planet, but as a highly regulated biological machine. The records in Part 6 clarify the true purpose of the 3,600-year return. The Anunnaki do not return to rule over our existing civilization. They return to dismantle it and install a new planetary operating system. The tablets describe our current era as the overgrown season, a time where the human population and its chaotic technologies have reached a state of maximum entropic noise. To the managers, our cities, our internet, and our global conflicts are simply interference that must be cleared to make room for the next phase of their long-term project. We decoded the ecological purge protocols. The texts state that the physical disasters associated with the radiant star, the floods, the seismic shifts, and the atmospheric fires are actually utilized by the Anunnaki as architectural tools. They don't prevent the cataclysms because the cataclysms do the heavy lifting of clearing the entropy. The hidden cache reveals that the Anunnaki have have subterranean terraforming engines positioned deep within the Earth's mantle, designed to activate only when the return window is fully open. These engines work in tandem with the gravitational pull of Planet 9 to reshape the coastlines, scrub the atmosphere of pollutants, and reset the magnetic grid. The researchers were stunned to find the population quota logs. The Anunnaki have a specific number in mind for the resonant Lulu, the humans who survived the biological resonance of the previous stage. This surviving population is not kept out of mercy, but as a seed stock for the next 3,600-year cycle. The engineering of the Great Reset involves a radical simplification of human life. The tablets describe a post-reset world where the survivors are integrated into a harmonic hive, where technology is no longer external and mechanical, but internal and biological. Our current Silicon Age is seen by the architects as a crude, temporary scaffolding that is about to be torn down. As we analyze the New Eden template, the tone of the cache turned towards the future. The architects provided detailed maps of the safe zones, specific geographic locations where the Earth's crust is reinforced by ancient pre-flood foundations. These are the locations where the Anunnaki houses of the sky will land to establish the new administrative hubs. We realized with chilling clarity that these safe zones correspond exactly to the locations of the world's most enigmatic megalithic sites: Giza, Teotihuacan, Baalbek, and of course the site of the hidden cache itself in Nineveh. These were never just monuments, they were landing pads and stabilization anchors for the Great Reset. The most controversial discovery in Part 6 was the sovereignty waiver. The tablets explain that humanity, as a created species, has no legal or biological standing to claim ownership of the Earth. We are tenants of the Shah. The contract we found in the first level was not a treaty between equals, it was a lease. And according to the Silver Astrolabe and the Singing Magnetite, the lease has expired. The Great Reset is the process of the landlords reclaiming the property, renovating the structure, and installing a new generation of more efficient Lulu. In the final hours of the expedition, the architect's vault began to project a visual timeline of the next 12 months. It showed the systematic shutdown of the global electrical grid, not due to solar flares, but due to the intentional frequency dampening by the incoming fleet. It showed the rising of the oceans and the subsequent smoothing of the Earth. But it also showed a vision of a world reborn, a planet with a vibrant, violet-tinted atmosphere, silent, crystalline cities, and a human race that finally remembers its place in the cosmic hierarchy. The lead archaeologist, looking at the glowing hologram of a transformed Earth, whispered a final realization. They aren't destroying us, they are pruning us. The engineering of the Great Reset is the ultimate act of cosmic gardening. To the flower, the gardener's shears are a tool of death. To the gardener, they are the only way to ensure the health of the garden. The hidden cache of Nineveh has fulfilled its purpose. It has provided the roadmap for the end of the world as we know it, and the blueprint for the world that is to come. The engineering has already begun. The mantle is shifting, the sky is changing hue, and the architects are descending to begin the construction. The Great Reset is not a theory, it is a scheduled event, and we are the last generation to remember the world before the harvest. In the final moments before the hidden cache of Nineveh sealed its central core for the last time, our team reached the scriptorium of the first breath. This was not a hall of machines or biological vats, but a chamber of pure records, the personal final words of the Anunnaki scribes who were tasked with documenting the 3,600-year cycles. Unlike the cold, administrative tone of the engineering vaults, this chamber felt intimate, almost weary. Here we found the Covenant of the Scribes, a message left specifically for the generation that would be standing at the precipice of the Great Reset. The lead archaeologist sat at a stone desk that had remained untouched for millennia, translating a series of delicate, wafer-thin gold leaves. These were the letters to the last Lulu. The scribes did not write as masters to slaves, but as older brothers to younger ones. They expressed a profound sense of melancholy, acknowledging the cruelty of the Great Sleep, the thousands of years during which humanity was left in the dark, stripped of its heritage and forced to survive in a state of amnesia. They apologized, in their own way, for the necessity of the pruning, explaining that without the reset, the biological experiment of Earth would eventually collapse under its own entropic weight. The message reveals that the scribes themselves were a bridge, a hybrid class of thinkers who stayed behind during previous cycles to ensure the continuity of knowledge. They described the burden of the Watchers, the task of observing human wars, the rise and fall of empires, and the slow, painful rediscovery of basic truths, all while knowing that the countdown was always ticking in the background. They wrote of the beauty they saw in human struggle, the art, the music, and the brief flashes of resonance that occurred even in the darkest hours of the 3,600-year cycle. The final scrolls provide the most important instruction for the survivors of the Great Reset, the anchor of memory. The scribes warned that once the architects arrive and the magnetic grid is reset, there is a risk of a secondary amnesia, a total loss of the old world's identity. They urged the waiters at the gate to hold on to the stories of their ancestors, for even though the old world must be dismantled, its experiences are the sole data that the Anunnaki value most. They explained that the harvest is not just about genetics, it is about the unique vibrational frequency that humanity developed during its long isolation. As we reached the very last leaf of gold, the script changed from cuneiform to a series of universal geometric symbols that seemed to vibrate with a soft, matte gold light. This was the final benediction. It stated, "Do not fear the shadow of the ship, for the shadow is merely the precursor to the new light. You are the fruit of a long winter, and the harvest is an act of love, not of war. The managers come not to end your life, but to integrate your story into the great song of the stars." The researchers stood in the center of the room, the glowing holographic models of the previous vault now fading as the cache's power began to redirect toward the surface beacons. The silence was absolute. We realized that the scribes of Nineveh had fulfilled their ancient contract. They had reached across the abyss of time to hold our hands at the moment of our greatest transformation. The hidden cache was their final gift, a bridge of understanding built so that we would not have to face the arrival in total terror. The final line of the scriptorium was carved into the archway above the exit. It was a simple phrase, repeated in every language the scribes knew would eventually manifest on Earth. The circle is closed. The brothers have returned. Breathe with the earth, for the song is about to begin. We left the scriptorium and began our ascent back to the surface of the Nineveh sands. Above us, the sky was no longer the familiar blue of our childhoods. It was a deep, shimmering violet, and the first of the massive, dark monoliths was already breaking the cloud layer, its hull reflecting the light of a star that hadn't been seen in our skies for 36 centuries. The countdown had ended. The message was received. The managers were home. The air above the Nineveh sands has changed. It no longer carries the dry, parched scent of the desert, but a heavy metallic charge that tastes of ozone and ancient electricity. As we stand here, the last members of the expedition to leave the hidden cache, we are witnessing the final curtain call of the world we once knew. The descent into the vault was a journey through stone and time, but the ascent back to the surface is a descent into a much deeper, more challenging truth. We are the first generation in 36 centuries to look at the stars and see not just distant lights, but the approaching silhouettes of our architects. The violet sky above us is a canvas of quiet transformation. The massive monoliths descend without sound, their presence so immense that they seem to bend the gravity around them. There is no panic, no screaming sirens of war, only a profound planetary silence. This is the sleep outro, the final notes of the long 3,600-year slumber of the human race. The amnesia is lifting, and as it does, the frantic noise of our modern civilization is being replaced by a deep, rhythmic resonance that pulses through the very soles of our feet. We are finally breathing in sync with the Earth, and the Earth is finally breathing in sync with the radiant star. As we look back at the entrance of the cache, now slowly being reclaimed by the shifting sands, we realize that the truth we sought was never hidden. It was simply waiting for our eyes to be tuned to see it. The Anunnaki are not invaders from a hostile world, nor are they the benevolent gods of our desperate prayers. They are the cosmic engineers returning to a project they never truly abandoned. They are the gardeners returning to the orchard after a long, cold winter. We are the fruit, weathered and scarred by the storms of our isolation, yet carrying within us the unique data of our survival. The Great Reset is not an ending, but a calibration. The fear that once gripped us in the lower vaults has dissolved into a strange, calm acceptance. When you stand beneath the shadow of a ship that spans the horizon, the trivialities of borders, currencies, and petty ideologies vanish like mist in the sun. We are seeing ourselves for the first time as the Scribes saw us, as a single biological family, a Lulu species that has finally reached its moment of maturity. The harvest is not a culling, but an integration, a gathering of the stories, the pains, and the triumphs we experienced while we were alone in the dark. The light of the false dawn is now a steady amber glow on the horizon, meeting the violet heights of the zenith. The magnetite pillar deep beneath us has reached its crescendo, its song now audible to every living soul on the planet. It is a lullaby for the old world and a fanfare for the new. The sleep outro is the transition period where we let go of the illusions of sovereignty and embrace the reality of our heritage. We are being invited back into the great song of the stars, not as servants, but as a species that has earned its place through the sheer endurance of its spirit. In these final moments of our record, we watch as the first of the houses of the sky touches the earth near the ancient ruins. The dust kicked up by its landing is golden, shimmering with the same resonance we saw in the Hall of the Living Stone. The doors are opening. Not just the doors of the ships, but the doors of our own perception. The amnesia is gone. The managers are here to collect the accounts, to prune the branches, and to lead us into the next Shah, the next 3,600 years of guided growth. Do not fear the silence of the electrical grids or the shifting of the poles. These are merely the sounds of the house being prepared for its owners. Close your eyes and listen to the pulse in your veins. It is the same pulse that drives the radiant star. It is the signature of the Anunnaki, and it is the heartbeat of humanity. The descent into truth is complete. We have moved from the darkness of the cache into the light of the return. The record of the Nineveh expedition ends here. But for the human race, the story is only just beginning. The gardeners are in the garden. The circle is closed. Welcome to the first day of the new Shah. Welcome home.